I'm wondering, did we get that horn thing again? Because I tried turning it off. We'll see. There's a couple of things I'm going to be practicing, actually. All right. A lot of things on my mind. I just got done doing all the updates for severe threat analysis, the tropical threat analysis, and the long-range thoughts. So, you premium members, you know who you are. Again, thank you for visiting. Thank you for coming in. Definitely check out those discussions tonight, as we have them all covered. So let me explain the update schedule first for some of you guys. But I got some questions about it. Okay. It turns out, well, the air horn did go off again. I don't know why it went off again. I got to find out what's causing that. I do apologize. I'll figure it out.
It might just be a default thing.
I think it might be a default thing. I don't know. But I will figure it out. I promise you. All right. So it turns out I'm not Superman. And as a result, I actually have to sleep at some point. So I've been getting some warning signs that I need to get more sleep than what I've been getting. So as a result, I've been trying to figure out a way to adjust the updates. So here's what's going to happen. And I'll probably have to explain this again later on when more people come back, because it does look like everyone is getting ready to enjoy the Labor Day weekend ahead of time. But because of the fact that I've been getting maybe 3 to 5 hours at most of sleep every night, because I'm a workaholic, that actually ends up being bad for your health. And I've been noticing things like becoming more forgetful, have a hard time. You probably noticed it. Like I lose my train of thought for a minute, and it all ties to not getting enough sleep. So I'm adjusting the update schedules with doing a lot of the text discussions in the evening and the video discussions in the morning, which those are going to get moved more towards 6 a.m. So by doing that, the objective is to provide better products for you guys, even the public ones, be a better meteorologist, be a healthier meteorologist, and also provide content that is unique in the afternoon or in the evening and in the morning. So that's going to be the goal, okay, going forward. And I think it's going to work out great in the winter, because then we'll have analysis for the 0Z guidance and the 12Z guidance. And the videos will be a unique standalone, and the text discussions will be a unique standalone. And I think that's going to work out really well, and also it probably won't kill me then. So I think that would probably be a good thing. And we don't want that, right? So now we got that out of the way. I want to start this discussion because we've issued the fall forecast. Premium members, check that out in the seasonal discussions. And we issued the monthly forecast for September. And I want to start off with looking at the broad-based data, and then we'll drill down to the tropical weather and the weather pattern for this upcoming month and going forward. So this is the AAM, okay? Now the AAM, the angular atmospheric momentum, typically in a La Nina year is negative, predominantly negative. And we've been seeing it negative back here. And the reason why this is important is that the La Nina influence, which was the basis for the tropical forecast and for the summer forecast, and a lot of people put a lot of weight for the fall forecast. I've even seen it for the winter forecast. Suggests the following things. One, the AAM remains in a negative state. It typically does not go positive. Positive states are more typical of El Nino. The reason why I bring that up is that, well, here we are. We have an environment here where we have a positive state happening in the heart of the hurricane season. And that's really unusual because what that does is that it suppresses rising motion over Africa and the Atlantic Ocean. This is going to be occurring at the heart of the hurricane season, which means, theoretically, this would kill any potential for any widespread development of tropical systems in the Atlantic. This could be the most epic bust of the tropical season forecast we have ever seen from myself, from Colorado University, State University, from NOAA, from everyone. And there's a part of me that's excited about it because that means we're learning new things, which is always fun. If you're a scientist, learning new things, failure is the best thing for you because then you learn more stuff. So on that hand, it's exciting. It's also a good news because who wants to see their homes destroyed from hurricanes, right? But at the same time, it's challenging because this is a warning sign for the fall forecast and the winter forecast. Because this La Nina is not performing and having an influence on the 500 millibar pattern that we typically see. Now, could this be part of climate change? Could this be just a off year? Could it be an influence of the QBO? I don't know. But what I do know is that this La Nina is in no way, shape, or form acting how it should for the summer, for the influence that we're seeing in the Atlantic. And so therefore, to make the assumption that the fall with a weakening La Nina will perform like other falls with weakening La Ninas is kind of silly. And to make that assumption for winter forecasts, because I'm already seeing winter forecasts floating around out there, is perilous. Okay? Because if you make that assumption, then you're ignoring what's been happening all summer. So, what do we see when we see a weakening La Nina? Well, let me pull up some of the data here from the CPC. Let me go right to our forecast here. Pull this up. This is what I use, by the way. If you're ever interested in where I'm getting my data from, I go right to the CPC. There's no point of trying to, try to reanalyze it yourself or anything like that. It's right here, right for you. It's free. Well, not free. You paid for it with your tax dollars. So let's walk through this La Nina, shall we? Okay, so after a peak where we had influence from a Kelvin wave, you see how it goes? You see these spikes, these negative spikes? When you see this is an indication of Kelvin wave influence. Okay? So when you see this crash, if it's followed by a rapid rise, it does not mean that your La Nina is strengthening. It just means you're seeing Kelvin waves. A strengthening La Nina looks like this. See where it's more sustained and then it just kind of levels out? When you get these spikes that show up, those are indications of Kelvin waves moving through. So we have that in the observations. And notice your coldest areas are in the western areas in Nino 4 and Nino 3.4, which is important if you consider that as a continued theme for much of the fall. That means you're seeing a suppression of convection or thunderstorms around the date line, which in the fall means something different than in the winter because of the orientation and the wavelength. Okay? Remember, the wavelength in the summer and in the fall, early fall, is far different than in the late fall and winter. Okay? In late fall and winter, you have more thermal gradients, and so everything's sharper. In the summer and in the early fall, thermal gradients aren't as strong, so the wavelengths are a little bit more spread out, so you get a little bit different result. So this here would support the evolution of a trough around Alaska, around the Aleutians and the Gulf of Alaska, which is exactly what we've been seeing. Take a look at, let's see here. I know I had it somewhere in here. Here we are. Here's our observations right there. There's our trough that's been pesky right around this area. That teleconnects into a trough here. You throw in some tropical influence over the Western Pacific, and boom, there you go. You get your persistent trough over the eastern United States. Now, if this was during the winter, this trough would be focused in here because of the lifting dynamics. Then you get a trough on the west coast like this, a broad ridge, and then you trough over the Atlantic Ocean, which would really annoy a lot of snow lovers on the East Coast. So, orientation and timing matters. So back to our La Nina. If I can find it there. Here we are. You can see the evolution here taking place. Okay? It's pretty clear that our La Nina continues to fester mostly in our western zones, showing up all the data over the weeks. But notice, in terms of changes, we aren't seeing, there's been some thoughts that we're going into a strong La Nina. There is literally no data to support that. This right here is your change in weekly sea surface temperature anomalies from August 24th minus July 27th, okay? So what it shows here is really not much of a change. It's kind of steady state, a little bit stronger around Nino 3, but it's warming up in Nino 1+2 and pretty much steady state in Nino 4 and Nino 3.4. In other words, there is no signal for strengthening or weakening right now. Where we look for in terms of the evolution of where La Nina is going, we look at two things, the subsurface and the SOI data. So in terms of the subsurface, we're seeing this focus here, but no indication of any type of thermal gradient that would support a continuation of strengthening. We see indication of warming water heading towards the date line. We're seeing the colder water overall remain steady state. If anything, maybe a little bit stronger right around Nino 3, but then warming towards Nino 1+2. So we're getting a lot of mixed signals here in the subsurface. And of course, there we go with our anomalies. There's our sinking air over the date line. Guys, I want you to take this all in because it all connects to what we're going to be talking about for the fall pattern and for the upcoming weekend and what's going on in the tropics. But you have to understand the large scale, okay? What's going on a large scale in terms of what's happening here in this pattern. So, as a result, these are all these lifting parameters, which we can go over later. Okay, and this is our history going back to 2010. And you can see this is a very unique La Nina. And we have 1, 2, and we're trying to go for 3, which is extremely rare. And then here's our forecast from the IRI. This is a combination of all your model data. And you can see the idea of a steady weakening. Now, the weakening here, the trend is slower now. It now has a weak La Nina going into the winter and collapsing. Hold that thought. We also see that with the CFS. Weak La Nina slowly collapsing as we head into winter. Again, consider what that means. I'm going to explain to you what that means, but I want you to think about it, okay? Based on what you know about what La Nina does to our weather pattern. And then, take a look at our SOI data while all this is happening. The SOI data, what this is your measurement of pressure, okay? It's basically the atmospheric influence of La Nina. The reason why you want to use this is that while sea surface temperatures are very important and obviously a great bellwether to decide what's going on in the atmosphere, the SOI data gives you a true reading of just how much influence La Nina is having. Typically in moderate La Ninas, you're looking for around 15. Okay, weak La Nina is somewhere between 5 and let's say 14, right in that bell range. And below 5, you're usually starting to move into like a neutral zone. So what we've been seeing over time is a steady weakening of our La Nina state in the monthly averages and the seasonal averages. We've seen a steady decline. Now, it's basically going like this because typically these things don't just go straight down. It's usually kind of like in waves. And the reason why you have waves is because your daily contributions. And the signal to me that, hey, things are starting to change in the atmosphere was based off of what we're seeing in the daily values. Negative values typically signal signs of winds changing to support more of an El Nino state. In a La Nina, you rarely, if ever, see it. But when a La Nina starts to weaken, you start to see these little pockets, these little brief phases of negative phases showing up. And we're starting to see that more and more. We've been seeing it for the past couple of months. For much of the summer, we didn't see a negative phase at all, going all the way back to roughly April. And that was when the Indian Ocean was very much amplified and very warm to drive this whole second phase of La Nina. Now that has collapsed, and so as a result, we're seeing more and more of these negative phases, which weakens your La Nina state. By the way, if you're looking for the reverse, if you're looking for a El Nino and you want to see whether it's weakening, then it's the exact opposite. You get a lot of negative states, but then you start to see more and more pockets of positive states showing up, kind of chipping away at the circulation, right? So we're seeing this signal more and more take shape. So we have this signal showing up with a weakening La Nina taking place. We have a very unusual event of the AAM, going into a positive state at the heart of our hurricane season, which limits tropical development. And you're starting to see changes in the polar jet stream, in that the polar jet stream is starting to strengthen as you would expect it to. But notice the subtropical jet stream. Let me zoom out here. Take a look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an active subtropical jet stream for the summer. Okay? You got monsoon rains pushing up into Texas. You got a nice strong shortwave here. You have plenty of activity out here around the Eastern Pacific. That subtropical jet stream is causing shear to run up against our disturbances trying to form out here, which typically you don't see in La Nina seasons. You're seeing this feature right here in the subtropical jet stream becoming more robust. So remember where I said that La Nina should be weakening as we move through the fall and into the winter and heading towards that neutral state? Well, that means that your polar jet stream remains strong, but your subtropical jet stream starts to strengthen. And so as a result, you start getting more of these short waves coming in from the Great Lakes, interacting with these short waves coming in from the southern plains. And that, ladies and gentlemen, leads to all sorts of chaos and a very difficult forecast. So the start of fall, I think, is going to be very similar to what we're seeing in August, where we get these cold fronts trying to come in. Naturally, much like the one that just passed through, they'll be a little bit stronger. Right now, it's beautiful with the dry air coming in. Take a look at the dry air here. I mean, absolutely beautiful, okay? So these polar cold fronts are going to be able to come in and drop the temperatures briefly, but we're going to continue to have a pushback of the Western Atlantic Ridge. And so what that leads to is plenty of mornings where the temperatures are above normal, and our temperatures for the start of fall will be above normal with muggy conditions. Not so much heat wave type weather, but 85 and muggy. Okay, kind of get my drift there. I don't see a lot of support right now of widespread rainfall events until October. Why do I say October? Because October is when our La Nina starts to push into that very weak phase. It's still La Nina, but it's starting to lose its grip. The 500 millibar pattern starts to change because of the different wavelengths. And what we're going to watch out here for, here we are. Okay. What we're going to watch out for is you're going to see more persistent troughs here. And you're going to see a ridge axis starting to take shape here in response to the strengthening subtropical jet stream here. And so what this all translates to is a building ridge here that's going to start to take shape. And you're going to start to see more support for below normal heights here and interaction of short waves. And that could lead to some rainfall events that have become more widespread. I really don't see a lot of support for tropical impacts right now, which I know is a different tune from what I was saying earlier on. But considering where we are with the AMM and considering where we are evolving towards with our lifting parameters, the potential for a tropical system impacting our region is rapidly decreasing, which is great news. Again, you only need one to cause havoc, but right now that potential is rapidly declining. The other thing I'm noticing that I find very interesting is that as we move through early fall, notice the pockets. In fact, let me see if I can get a more of a global view of this, because it's really cool to see. There we go. Maybe Northern Pacific. Yeah, let's try Northern Pacific, just to kind of get the point here. Take a look at all of the upper level lows that are starting to develop in this pattern. A lot of cutoff systems. Kind of like almost like a hybrid type of influence on the 500 millibar pattern. Possibly looking at torque influence. A lot of shortwave, a lot of cutoff lows towards the Arctic. Which could lead to a lot of buildup of snowfall over Siberia here. So a lot of interesting little signals showing up here that all scream complete and total chaos to the forecast, which basically means as a meteorologist, you're going to be challenged on how this forecast is, on how the weather pattern is going to evolve. And the old rules of La Nina equals this for your seasonal forecast, you have to throw them out the window because it's not evolving that way. Finally, for those interested in the Labor Day weekend, this all ties back to what I was talking about now. So now we have understanding of the lifting parameters. We have understanding of where we're seeing our forcing, where we're seeing the influence of the AMM. Now we step forward towards Sunday, and now we have a better understanding of why we're seeing this positively tilted trough. This positively tilted trough for this weekend, especially Sunday and for Labor Day, leads to a cold front that stalls out over the region with marginal cold air transport. Your real cold air transport is locked up here. But basically what you end up with is a series of short waves passing through the region, keeping pesky showers around. I don't see widespread rainfall here, even though model guidance is a bit more aggressive in producing more widespread rainfall. This, to me, is more of a pesky shower hanging around the region type scenario with an easterly wind throughout much of the holiday weekend, but really amplifying the potential for showers on Sunday and Monday, all driven by all the lifting parameters that we just went over. So that's how we get there. And that same positively tilted trough is why anything that actually tries to develop here to the north of the greater Antilles will just basically get kicked right out because of the upper level winds associated in this environment. See, there's your upper level low. basically your winds cut in like this, and so anything that comes in gets thrown right back out into the Atlantic. And that is where we are. So now that I've gone over all that, I will go over a lot of your questions. It looks like we have quite a few. So we'll start off with the premium chat first, of course. And we have a lot of good questions here. Okay, so polar jet stream is really amplified right now at 250 and 500 millibars. Let's pull up the 250 and 500 millibars, shall we? And yeah, definitely. We can see that very nicely here. Look at these upper level winds. Now, this is something that you typically see in La Nina, where the polar jet stream is very strong. What has my attention, and you see it more at 700 millibars, is the evolution of our subtropical jet stream. For this time of year, that's a pretty good signal here from your subtropical jet stream. And you can even see it at 850 millibars. Going back up to 250 millibars, you can still see the signal taking shape. So, definitely changes are evolving here. And we're seeing a lot of amplification of the polar jet stream, and that's opening up the potential for cut-off low-pressure systems. Any ideas as to why the AAM is positive while La Nina is still going at a weak to moderate strength? Could that volcano have had an influence on the AAM with the water vapor? That is one of the theories, that the volcanic activity and the influence in the upper stratosphere is starting to have an influence on the QBO, and that QBO is having an influence on the forcing mechanisms on the planet as a whole, and so that's what's creating all sorts of anarchy. So yes, I do think that there's some play here with the volcano, but to be honest with you, I can't measure how much each factor is having an influence here. Because we're kind of in an uncharted territory, but definitely something that I'm going to be watching. Always happy with the hurricane season. It's quiet, I agree. I thought for sure there would be several named storms by now. Me too. What are the odds the AAM flips to negative? I do think it will flip to negative. It looks like there's more support for it to happen in October, so maybe we see a burst of activity in late September and October. But typically, I mean, this is kind of like the showtime for tropical weather, you know? Early September, you get like 4 or 5 tropical depressions, 3 of them become tropical storms, and all heck breaks loose. So, certainly interesting, you know, just the timing of it. So on Earth News School, which we're looking at right now, that the cold air 850 millibars and 700 millibars has grown over the past week. Definitely starting to shift seasons. Absolutely. You can see that when you adjust here. We'll go to 850 millibars. And you can see the growth of our cold air over the globe here. Now, I typically watch this, but I don't put a lot of weight in the forecasting of this in terms of seasonal forecasting yet. But I like to monitor it because it kind of gives me an idea of where are my polar and Arctic air masses the strongest, where is it building, and how much influence does it have on the growth of snowpack later on. And you can see so far, again, this could change pretty quickly, that we're seeing a pretty good focus of your coldest air on the Canadian side this year rather than the Siberian side. I don't know whether that's going to continue, but that's something that I'm certainly keeping an eye on. We need snow this year. I agree. I'm perfectly happy with plenty of snow this year. Okay, well, my wife just gave me a look. Okay, look, I do like snow. You know, maybe not 90 inches of snow, but I like snow. You know, of course I would. Is the Western Pacific still mostly quiet as far as tropical activity? Actually, we do have a pretty impressive storm out there. This one, hey, hello. It's tracking towards Japan, And the latest model guidance takes it towards the Sea of Japan and just south of Korea. It is one nasty hurricane. And it's one that I'm watching very carefully because as it lifts up towards the northern Pacific, it's going to have some influence on our trough around the Aleutians, which could teleconnect, let's say, by about mid-September to a pretty vigorous trough. So for the eastern United States, and maybe a coastal storm develops out of that. I don't expect it based on what I'm seeing so far, but you have to at least put the options out there considering the storm track and just the impressiveness. Let's see if I can pull up the satellite picture on this. Look at that. That's just wow. That's just impressive. That is one very impressive storm. One thing of interest, while the sun is a more active period, most of the CMEs have either missed Earth either entirely or been glancing hits, with the direct hits being weak and back down to Earth facing sunspots, with one on the far side nailing Venus. Yeah, the sun's definitely been more active, that is for sure, as we expected to. Take a look at what it's influencing in terms of the ozone in the atmosphere. I mean, this is completely collapsed with just a few pockets here of enhanced ozone, and that's about it. This is all taking place exactly where we're seeing our cutoff upper level lows. So we'll see what happens as we move through the fall and see if this continues to have as much of an influence. Indian Ocean has really cooled off again, and that's why I think that we're also going to see another factor that was supporting our La Nina start to give way and collapse again. Okay? When this warms up, this gets stronger. When this cools down, this gets weaker. Let's see if that holds true as we move through the rest of, continuing into September, I guess. Mid-70s was the last La Nina that had closest to 3P. Yep, I remember that. Well, I don't remember it, but I remember studying it. During a neutral ENSO state, is it typical for the SOI to bound positive-negative state on the MJ, based on the MJO phases? Yes, it does definitely have an influence, absolutely. Saw that even the 18Z GFS can't send a hurricane anywhere near the U.S. in the next 15 days. And I'll take it. That's all I can say. Don't trust any forecast more than 3 days out this winter. It will be like calling the Powerball winning lottery. I think one of the key features I'm going to be using a lot, actually, is the water vapor satellite picture over the Pacific. And what my goal is, especially in the evening, is to look at the water vapor satellite picture and compare the short waves to what's in the model guidance to see where I can find the errors, and then take those errors and try to create a better forecast from the model guidance. It's going to be real tough. The warm water in the North Pacific is impressive. A lot over off the Canadian. Yes, it is. The Gulf of Alaska has really warmed up, surprisingly. And we've gone from a negative PDO to, I can't really call it a positive PDO. It's more like a neutral state with a lot of warm water. Because a positive PDO would lead to cold water here and warm water here. We're not seeing that at all. But we're seeing a lot of warm water. And that certainly has caught my eye, along with a lot of warm water off of the East Coast here, which also is a major signal of a sustained negative AMO signal. Now let me check out what's going on YouTube. Let's see what we got here. And good evening, Judy. I'm just making sure. Unfortunately, I gotta wait for that. Okay, so if we have a week, I think I might be missing some of. Okay, there it is. I think I might be missing some of the questions here.
No,
There's two? Okay. Okay, good evening, Judy. So if we have a weak La Nina, do you think that we still can get a few snowstorms and below normal temperatures during the winter months? We actually, some of our most impressive winters have been weak La Ninas. What I'm trying to illustrate, what I'm trying to explain, is that this La Nina pattern is not a typical La Nina pattern. And to extrapolate typical seasonal climate influences of La Nina to the upcoming fall and winter may be a big error. I think that we're dealing with a lot of uncertainties as a result. Will Danielle become a hurricane in the next 48 hours? We don't even have a Danielle yet. So I could probably say no, because unless whatever is developing in the northern Atlantic here, let's see if the National Hurricane Center has had any update here yet. At 8 o'clock, nothing. If anything, it's going to be this disturbance, this subtropical disturbance up here. Let's see here. So this feature up here could take on some subtropical characteristics. But honestly, the disturbance in the northern Atlantic has a better potential of becoming a tropical or subtropical storm than the disturbance down here. Because the disturbance down here is dealing with a lot of shear and dry air. And it still hasn't developed a very well-defined low-level circulation here. Let me pull this up real fast. Just get this. So there's that disturbance up here. And here's our disturbance down here. This is the most organized we've seen this disturbance down here. But now you're getting all that dry air that's killing all the convection. And the disturbance up here, well, it's still featuring cold core characteristics. So it's not a pure tropical system yet either. So it's kind of a bit of a race of time to see which feature takes shape, takes hold first. But I would not be surprised if we get a subtropical storm in the next 48 hours heading out towards the Azores than the disturbance to the east of the Windward Islands. So interesting stuff. So that pretty much answers Eric's question too as well, considering Invest 93 and 91L. But again, I mean, for this time of year, for La Nina state in the tropical Atlantic, this is incredibly quiet. This is something I would expect with an El Nino, not a La Nina. La Nina, I would expect, a disturbance here, tropical low pressure system there, something developing in the Caribbean. Nothing. And every time we've had one that's gotten close to develop, like a potential tropical cyclone, it hasn't come through. Basically it's collapsed. That one east of Leeward looks like it's fading quickly. Well, what's happening here, let me pull that up here, is that shear is running into the low-level circulation, and some dry air has gotten involved as well, which we could see right here. See how the dry air, let me refresh this real fast. See all this dry, dusty air to the north of this system? Well, it keeps on getting entrained into the low-level circulation, which is becoming better organized. But because of the dry air and because of the increasing shear, it doesn't look as healthy as you would normally expect it to be. So that's why we're seeing what we're seeing here in this respect. But outstanding questions tonight, guys. Outstanding questions. So I just want to walk through as far as the weather pattern for now through Labor Day, because I know I've gotten a couple of those questions via email, so let me just cover that. Really all the way on through the first half of the Labor Day weekend, which, let's face it, let's count Friday as well. Tranquil conditions are in place, very comfortable, very nice, high pressure and complete control. You'll get an easterly wind, so it won't be a hot and humid weather pattern, but basically a tranquil weather pattern with a bit of a maritime influence on it. It's on Sunday where everything starts to go downhill. We'll start to see that cold front stall out over the region. You're just going to start to see showers developing as a result, but not a washout. If you have plans for Sunday, I wouldn't cancel them. I would just be aware of a passing shower or two. And then on Labor Day itself, you're going to be in a clash between high pressure pushing down from the St. Lawrence River Valley and that stationary front leading to an easterly wind. Now, we've seen this type of development before in the model guidance with a lot of enhancement of rainfall along the coast. But reality is that because of the dry air at the surface, at the boundary layer, this looks like it's a bit overdone. So I like the idea of widely scattered showers on Labor Day, but not a washout. And the further you are in the interior, the more likely those showers are more isolated. So if you have outdoor plans for Labor Day, barbecue, something of that nature, have resources in place to dodge a few showers. But I don't see this right now as a complete washout or anything of that nature. But definitely a few showers will be hanging around the region. And then we continue that pattern into early next week with our high pressure to the north producing an easterly fetch, keeping the threat for those showers in place with a brief heavy downpour possible from time to time. Okay. Surprised by the lack of closed systems forming as well. Yeah, I agree. Dylan asks, but I feel we are going to get a tropical storm for the East Coast in late September. This summer has been weird with no rain and just hot like 95 plus. I feel like we could get a storm in late September. Well, the weather doesn't work like that. Okay? What you have to have are positive feedback. So could you get a tropical system? You could. But what I'm telling you tonight is based on the data we have in front of us, the conditions are becoming less and less favorable. You know? Judy asks, do you think September and October will be warmer this year because of how weird La Nina is right now? Yeah, I definitely see us remaining in a warmer pattern above normal, not hot. What I mean by that is that because of our influence from the Western Atlantic Ridge, you're going to have more of an influence from the Gulf Coast than you would over central Canada. I think that we're going to see a lot of wild swings in our temperatures, driven mostly by the reduction in humidity, and your wildest swings are going to be with your low temperatures. I think that in your urban areas, it's going to be more difficult to get rid of this humidity, so your low temperatures are going to be more elevated. It's going to elevate the base for your high temperatures, and so that's how you end up with above normal temperatures for the early and mid-fall. I think once we get the stronger influences from polar air masses in central Canada, that theme will start to change in November. I'm done with summer. I want snow. You got a couple months to wait there. Okay, it's 8:43. I'll take a couple more questions, and then I think we'll cut it down for the night. All right, so get your questions in, and then we'll shut it down for the night and see where we're at. Oh, look, the Mets are still winning. That's good. DeGrom's doing his thing. I see. And this is a more important series. I'm just talking baseball for a minute. This is going to be a more important series for the Braves than it is for the Mets, because after this, the Mets play a bunch of really bad teams. So, not that they're going to win every game, but if they keep on winning every series, the Braves literally are going to have to win every game in order to catch the Mets. So, I'm pretty excited about that. So, if they win one of these games versus the Braves, it's not good news. Versus the Dodgers, it's not good news for the Braves. We need some good rain in the fall to get snow this winter. Otherwise, the word on the winter will be Virgo. Yeah, I totally get your point there. What I would focus on is the changing weather pattern from mid-October to mid-November. During that time period, that's where I'm going to be watching to see where we're starting to line up our cyclogenesis on the East Coast and whether we can start to get more of those widespread rainfall events. If we get a theme of more steady rainfall events on the East Coast, that would definitely increase the favor for for more precipitation events. Not necessarily always snowfall, but certainly precipitation events for the northern mid-Atlantic, and we'll throw in the Appalachians as well. Oh wow, the Yankees had another pitching injury? Is this new or from yesterday? Because I know they had an injury from yesterday, but that's rough. Okay, well, we're going to shut it down for the night. Thank you again for coming in to watch. I really appreciate it. And thank you, as always, for providing some great questions. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And I will see you next week, same time, same place. Stay safe out there.